Into the Van is dead. Welcome to the Rogue Country podcast. How are you guys doing? I'm super excited for this brand new episode of this brand new format with this brand new redesign because, I'd had 5 episodes of Into the Van recorded actually in the van, and I just didn't think it was the best way forward to try and promote this, try and engage with people, try and get new listeners. So we have launched the Rogue Country podcast. Still me, still the exact same incredible guests. We've got Brittany Collins today. But I just wanted to bring in the Rogue Country fans, the Rogue Country family, and I wanted to bring in a cooler look. I know it sounds weird, but I just think Rogue Country's got such an amazing way to sound, and it's got a cool design. I love the logos that we put together for it. And, Into the Van was kind of spinning in its own little universe. I have my music, then we had Rogue Country, and we were trying to do stuff with that, and the radio show is too much of a ball ache to really run. So what can we do to provide this? And I'm talking to these incredible artists who deserve a better and bigger platform, and Rogue Country provides that platform. So this is now the Rogue Country podcast, and I'm super excited to get going with it. I really cannot thank you enough for sticking with us. This is the 51st episode. We've done 50 of these things, and it is thanks to you listening that we get to keep doing them. So I really, truly appreciate it. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Tell your friends about us. And let's get down to brass tacks and what is happening right now. Before we get down to it with Brittany Collins, whose brand new album, Things I Tell My Therapist, is out this week on Friday, 2nd of September, we've got some live dates for you. Yes! If you're listening to this podcast and you're in Manchester on the day of this podcast release, which is the 29th of August on Monday, I am playing with Whitney Rose at the Rose and Monkey Hotel in Manchester. I cannot wait for that. Her music's great. After that, we've got the Americana International Festival on the 10th of September. And then this is a really cool thing that's happening in October. I am going on the road with Chris Dover and Jody Davis of Fargo Railroad Company. We are doing a little run of 3 dates. We're doing the Running Horse in Nottingham on the 14th of October, the Alder in Sheffield on the 15th of October, and the Boar and Fable in Bradford on the 16th of October. Now, the cool thing is that's the 3 of us playing these shows together, but in Nottingham, we're joined by Cold Hands, who's an amazing artist in Nottingham. On the 15th of October in Sheffield, we are joined by the one and only Josh Bettis, and then it's just the 3 of us in Bradford. And these are going to be songwriting round shows, and I cannot wait for it. I'm going to be doing completely different sets than I normally do. I think this is going to be more of a sit-down affair. People are really going to be paying attention to the lyrics, and I can't wait to bust some songs out for that vibe. Then, on the 6th of November at the York in Bolton, I can't believe I get to do this, I am playing with Nick Shoulders and Grave Dancer. Yes, the Nick Shoulders and the Grave Dancer. They're on a UK tour around November, and I am lucky enough to be opening the show in Bolton. Tickets are available now. And if that's not enough, November keeps on rolling with the legendary Camp Cole. He was on this podcast. I toured with him last year. He's phenomenal. I'm going to be playing 4 dates with him. The Night and Day in Manchester on the 17th of November. Boom in Leeds on the 19th of November. Corporation Sheffield on the 24th of November. And the Bodega in Nottingham on the 27th of November. This is what my year looks like in terms of gigs, and I am so hyped for it. I hope to see you at a show. But let's get down to what we're here for. Brittany Collins is joining me today on the Rogue Country podcast to talk about her new album, Things I Tell My Therapist. It is available everywhere from September 2nd, so this week on Friday you can listen to this amazing album. She's been influenced by folks like Brandi Carlile, Jason Isbell, Jack White, Chris Stapleton, and we get into, being born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, what the music scene's like there, what it's like being a woman in the music industry, how the internet has impacted the music industry as a whole, and then we get to talk about some of her amazing songs like the Belvedere Hotel. It's an 8-minute epic that I cannot recommend highly enough. From start to finish, this is an album you want to hear. So welcome to episode 51 of the Rogue Country podcast with Mike West and Brittany Collins. You just said you're in Washington State. Yeah. I don't know that much about the Pacific Northwest. I know Seattle, Portland, and Mount Rainier, and that's kind of my knowledge of that area.
That's kind of what everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
So I'm where I'm at. I've always lived in small towns. I live in a little community that we live just at the base of this. It's literally called Little Mountain. It's a little mountain. We're not very creative in our naming of places around here, but it's about an hour and a half from the Canadian border.
Oh, cool.
So, in about an hour outside of Seattle.
Mm.
So, I mean, as a musician, like I'm traveling all the time anyway, like I don't play the same, city more than once a month. So it's like, I don't really care where I live because I'm just going to end up driving all over the place anyway, and it's certainly a lot cheaper and prettier where I live than.
Yeah, no, that's such a valid point. And I think in this day and age, especially like back in the day, like I've been listening to the Cocaine and Rhinestones podcast, and it is like,
oh yeah,
back in the day, you had to move to Nashville, you had to move to Texas, you had to move to those places. And now it does seem like I'm in, Wirral next to Liverpool in the UK, you're in the Pacific Northwest. It doesn't have to be like a centralized one place to find your target or your audience or people who will like care. It's been really cool to see just the kind of evening out of opportunities in terms of where you need to go.
Yeah, totally. And, I mean, I'm going to be honest, like before I don't want to be the pandemic podcast, right? But like the pandemic did change a lot for me in terms of, strangely enough, it was kind of the kick in the ass that I needed to be like, I can't not do music, right? I need to do it all the time as often as I possibly can, because this, when everything was shut down, it like, I kind of have a little bit of an identity crisis, like, but there's so many opportunities that just like you said, would not have been available like before all of this, like I still think, it's helpful to like make those in-person connections, you meet people at shows, you meet people, I do travel, right? But you can maintain those connections online now, and you can kind of, I have, musicians, songwriters that I'm friends with on Instagram that I've never met. And we're like, we'll talk about like the latest, music news, or like, oh, this crazy thing that just came out, or, we'll like share tips, or like, share each other's singles and stuff. And it's like, I mean, that's a real friendship that is developed with a person that I've never actually met, I think, I'm a big fan of Lori McKenna's, and she was talking about how much it's changed because she's actually from Boston and spent a lot of time in Nashville. And she was talking about, now she just does most of her co-writes on Zoom. I've done a bunch of co-writes on Zoom. It's like actually very convenient.
That's the thing. It's like, it's just removing barriers, because even if you wanted to go out, it's like, well, I have to drive to, X. And I don't know, America's massive, so I assume most people are at least an hour or two away. So then it's just adding to time where if you can hop on Zoom, and it's cool to see that's happening. Like I've just started a group chat with all like my musician friends on WhatsApp, and it's like they're all scattered across the country, but it's just nice to have that like immediate connection where you don't see them face to face, but you can still check in with each other, and there's just that still regular like community building and just that scene that's growing. But with you coming from the Pacific Northwest, I read in your like press kit that I got sent that like there is a Northwest music scene up that way before the pandemic and stuff. So you grew up in the Pacific Northwest? Is this where you've always been? So you grew up in that scene. Was there anything, because obviously the Northwest is famous for the grunge scene, what was it like coming up? Was there an Americana, like a country scene, a country rock scene?
Well, so, and I'm obviously like not like a representative for all of the Pacific Northwest. I would say like a little bit of the answer I'm going to give you probably could be applied to like the entire world, because we really live in a world now with like digital music where I do think things are a lot more, it's a lot less you listen to whatever's on the radio, right? You have 3 stations and you either listen to the rock station or the pop station, right? Or the country station. It's less like that. Like, I don't know the last time I turned on the radio, right? I have my podcasts, I have Spotify, I have YouTube, I have all, like I get music from a lot of places. I mostly think I probably get music from like seeing friends post stuff and being like, oh, what's that? Listen, and so I think the Pacific Northwest is just like the rest of the world in that sense, where it's like, there's all these niche music scenes, right? There's actually a really strong metal scene here. And there's a lot of rock, obviously. You know, there's a big country scene. Actually, where I grew up, country was like the thing. And I will say, unfortunately, I kind of like missed out on that because like it was like very like bro country, you know, was the kind of popular thing. And not that that's, you know, like to each their own, right? But that's what I associated country music fans with, right? It was like, and then, you know, it's like I kind of grew up a little bit and expanded my worldview and realized that like roots in country music and like Americana as like a subgenre of that, right, is really just like, you know, punk rock in that it's made by people who are generally, you know, broke and marginalized in some way or another and ignored by the rest of society and frustrated, you know. And so like it's the themes translate, right? So like when I was growing up, there was a lot of like, I was always going to like punk shows, you know, I was obvious, like I was, you know, it's a cliche, but I did, you know, like I was listening to Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden and all those bands growing up. They were my like idols, right? That was the dream, you know. We all do that. We all have, wherever you come from, there's always the local legends where you're like, they made it, you know, they did the thing that the rest of us want to do. And so I was just as susceptible to that as anybody else. And so I think that I have this weird, that's part of the reason, like I kind of feel like I find my sound hard to categorize sometimes, because like I do feel like I had that foundation of being really into like rock and like grunge and punk, right? And then almost kind of deconstructing and going back to roots music as being like, oh, this is where everything comes from, you know. And then kind of like I got into like roots and country and Americana, kind of like I didn't get into that until I was like in my 20s and starting to kind of like realize that, oh, there's all these amazing singer-songwriters that like write really, really good music, you know. And I was kind of aligned with that. And so like where I live, strangely enough, I live in, it's a place called Skagit Valley, which is there's a ton of like just ridiculous like songwriters around here. And I have this theory that like a lot of us are just getting priced out of the cities, and so you are starting to see a lot more young artists like moving into rural communities because they can afford it and they can actually do art and still like afford to live like, you know, a reasonably comfortable life, right? And so I'm really fortunate. There's a great songwriting community where I'm at, really diverse, you know, like people into all kinds of different stuff, and, you know, blues, country, Americana, you know, rock, you know, it's all out there. And so I've found a good community, I think, just wherever you're at. Obviously it depends on where you're at in the Pacific Northwest, but there are those like little pocket communities where you can like find a home and be part of a scene.
No, that's awesome. It sounds similar to like, I don't know if you follow like Gems on VHS and stuff, but you see the like Arkansas, Ozark area with like Nick Shoulders and Willie Carlisle coming out. And it seems to be, it does have that vibe where it's like people have moved out the cities and tried to just create their own thing. But one of the interesting things I think about like the Pacific Northwest and the grunge scene is I think like the Nirvana Unplugged album has a lot of explaining to do for a lot of people of our generation picking up acoustics and like finding country music stuff. Because the first exposure I had to that kind of stuff was, you know, Where Did You Sleep Last Night? The like Lead Belly cover we did. And that was like a revelation. Then, you know, you go back and you find Lead Belly, then you find Woody Guthrie, and then like you're on your way.
Well, that's totally true. I mean, and I will say this, like, you know, that's kind of, I really do credit that with a lot of like my musical influence, was that I was finding I love these bands, right? But it's so funny to me. There's a lot of gatekeeping that goes on, you know, in like grunge metal scene, right? But so many of these songs are like, if you strip them down to acoustics, they're just ballads, you know, like they're like straight up like beautiful ballads, you know? They just have crunchy rock guitar being played over them most of the time. And so I actually was finding like, wow, I really love, like, I actually find that I like the acoustic version of some of these songs more, right? Because it's like, you're stripping it down to the essence of the song.
Mm.
Not always, but you know,
Yeah.
a lot of the time. And yeah, I don't know if you're, I mean, you know, one of the big, for me, the kind of crossover artists with like that helped me kind of make that jump was Frank Turner.
Mm.
You know, because that was kind of my first experience of like, this is like a guy who was like in the punk scene,
Yeah.
who plays an acoustic guitar, but he plays an acoustic guitar loudly and with a lot of vigor, right? And so that was kind of a lot of my inspiration, was like, oh, well, I can do that. You know, I don't have to be like this fantastic bluegrass flat picker to be able to like write a good song on like guitar.
No, that's the thing. It's like, you see, you know, Kurt Cobain play one of those songs, or you see just a band strip it down and you go, oh, actually that's just like 3 chords. But it is that gatekeeping thing. Like, I saw my ass with all that Stranger Things bullshit that's been happening about all these people seeing their ass about kids discovering Metallica, one of the biggest metal bands to ever walk the earth.
Right.
And they're annoyed about how they found it. I'm like, lads, you probably found it through School of Rock. Sit down.
Right. I know. And there's always, I don't know, the older generation always does this to the younger generation. And I try really hard not to do this, because I just think it's like, it's just such a cliche, man. Right. Like, but I'm like, I know, I remember being like 15 years old and finding my parents' like tape collection, you know, and my parents were pretty young when they had me. And so they had like, you know, Ozzy and Metallica and Cinderella and like Yngwie Malmsteen and all like the, you know, and I was like, this is great. You know, I was so into it. I loved it. And like, you know, some of those songs again are just beautiful, like ballads, right? But they have like crunchy rock guitar being played over them. You know, and so it's funny because I'm like, well, I think back to myself as a kid. It's not that I thought I like invented Metallica or like was the first person to know about Metallica, but I was really excited about it. And this was like a thing, this was new to me. Right. And so, you know, like if a younger generation is finding these bands and they're excited about it, like awesome, you know, like it doesn't matter where you find things, you know, I mean, I don't know about you, but like my generation, Tony Hawk Pro Skater was where we like, you know, how many of those songs like, you know, still are like stuck in your head, you know?
No, 100%. Like Papa Roach, who else? Public Enemy, like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater was one.
Bad Religion. That was like a big, jumping off point for Bad Religion.
Yeah, I remember when I had my old iPod, I had the Tony Hawk soundtracks like on it and just like click through it all. But it is one of those things. I don't know if it's that excitement you feel of finding a band, and then your mind goes twisted into thinking if someone else finds it, it takes away your excitement from it. So that's why I think people get really like tense about those type of things, because it's a really weird thing. And it's a weird when it's such a big band. That's the thing that confused me when it was when it was like Kate Bush. And it's like,
one of the biggest rock bands to ever exist, right?
Yeah, like Metallica's Black Album's still like the biggest selling metal album of all time. But you're getting mad that someone like a teenager on Stranger Things played like it on guitar. It's a really insane thing to do. It's weird how the gatekeeping industry just like or like not industry, like society and thinking just works, because then that would put someone off getting into that music, and you want people to find like how amazing metal is, how amazing rock is, how amazing country is.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, I might have a different like perspective on this a little bit as like a woman, right? Because no matter how old I get, like, you know, there's always like, you know, as a woman in the music industry, like it's like a running joke with like, I'm sure, you know, you might have heard this, right? But like amongst women, I know that this is a running joke. And if I made this joke to any woman, they would totally like, they would know what I'm talking about, is like this joke that like, if you wear a band t-shirt, you know, like a guy will be like, name their entire discography, you know, and who produced all 3 of those albums. And like, you know, it's like you have to like prove that you like know everything about a band for your fandom to be like legitimized.
Yeah,
right?
It has to be like, you have to have like an extra level of knowledge, and that is a super accurate thing. And it's even, I've read like the White Zombie bassist Sean Usalt. She wrote a really cool book said I'm with the band, and it's her experiences coming through for White Zombie, and she gets stopped going onto the stage because he was like, no groupies past this point. She's like, I am the fucking bassist of White Zombie. And there is that like sexist level to gatekeeping, especially I don't know if because Stranger Things is like a younger audience and it's a wide demographic, including a lot of girls who are finding Metallica, which is awesome. But it's like, what was their original bassist name or whatever, or who was the producer of Ride the Line? And it's like, can't you just enjoy things, man?
Yeah.
But I also don't know.
It's like, that's like the antithesis of like art. That's like not what art is supposed to be, right? Like it's supposed to be like this way of communicating, right? Like it's how we is like, art is like such an, more than anything else, it is such a uniquely human experience, right? Because since the dawn of time, we've been making art, we've been making sounds, and we've been making, you know, drawing pictures, and, you know, and we've been trying to entertain each other. And so it's so silly to say like you can't enjoy this art unless you have like this expertise in the art, because that's literally not the point, right? Like I want you to be like, if a song comes on the radio and you like that song, you're allowed to like that song regardless of if you actually know who that artist is.
Totally. And I don't know if the gatekeeping, especially with like when it's men against women being like, name 5 bands, I don't know if that's a load of neckbeards trying to be like, I'm going to impress her. And then they think in their head that's how they're going to do it. And it's just a lot of insecure fucking idiots who are trying to be like, if I can reel off the producer of this 1993 black metal album, then she'll see. And it's just like, it's one of those really insecure things. But it's such like a projected thing. And especially in like the metal community I've run across in like my area, where there's a lot of insecure guys just being like, this is ours, but please love me.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it's so funny. I don't know if it stems from like this idea that a lot of men think that like if they play music, that'll like get them chicks. And then they're like offended if they're also chicks doing it, because they're like, this was my way to get chicks, get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And obviously not all men, like, right. Like, I shouldn't have to say that, but like, there's this sense that like, well, if anybody ever teased me for this thing, like, then, you know, I'm kind of like grumpy about anybody else liking it because I suffered for liking this or whatever. But it's like, well, dude, everybody gets teased for something stupid, like high school, middle school, whatever. Like we've all gotten teased for stupid stuff. Like that doesn't mean that you own that thing, right? Oh, sorry. I had like a pop up. But yeah, I don't know what it is, you know, and it's not exclusive to music, right? Like,
no, but it's even
the tech community is like that, comics are like that.
But it's even that vein of thinking where it's like, I've seen the student loan debate where it's like, well, if you erase student loans now, I paid my student loan, and it's like, it's that
I had to suffer, so you do too, right?
Yeah, it's that spectrum of things where it's like, if I had to suffer, you have to suffer no matter what it is. And it's a really weird fucking thing. But moving on from suffering.
Yeah, right.
Your new album is really fucking good.
Oh, thanks.
I've really been enjoying it. I've really been enjoying listening. And things I tell my therapist was that, where did that like title come from in terms of the formation of the album? Did you have like a song and the themes ready, or was it something that kind of fell in place as you started putting the album together?
Yeah, so we were kind of already like writing the album, and actually what it came from is that's the title of one of the songs on the album. And I was just in a really weird place where like, so I was, you know, everything was shut down. I was in graduate school at the time, kind of making a career transition, really, because of all of that. Like I was finding myself a lot more invested in music and like just dedicating all of this time. And I was also engaged. And so there's something about like all of these things going on at once where I just was like thinking a lot about like, you know, all my life decisions and like, you know, and everything that got me to this point. And like, you know, and I was like I just was on a hike one day and I wrote the song Things I Tell My Therapist, just like kind of started, like a melody came into my head and I started writing. I was like literally typing it out on my notes app while I was like hiking around in the woods. And by the time I got home, I just like had a song. And I kind of like semi-jokingly named it Things I Tell My Therapist, because it literally was like, you know, I had, ironically, being in graduate school, For the first time I had health insurance that like actually paid for a therapist,
Oh,
right?
really?
So I was in therapy and I was like joking that like, you know, like, oh, I should have just said this to my therapist instead of writing a song, but here it is, you know. And so it kind of started as like a joke, but then I was like, no, I mean, actually this album and, you know, that song, but also the album in general really was kind of mostly written during a time where I was kind of like grappling with all this stuff, right? Like all of the things that had made me who I am and influenced how I communicate and the types of love I accept and the types of treatment that I accept and the way that I treat other people and the expectations that I have for the world, right? And so I was like, you know, grappling with all these things and trying to like kind of, I guess, decide like what was going to stay and what was going to go, you know, in terms of like, there are things that I probably need to like work past, right? Like that those need to get left behind. I need to like work through them and like leave them behind. And then there's other things that I want to like, you know, run towards. And that, you know, specifically was music. You know, and so the album for me was really just, it was like my diary. I was like writing about like my upbringing and the things that really shaped who I became and like my philosophy about like trying to, you know, overcome, like use the things that hurt you, so to speak, to like be better, you know. And in particular, you know, I like, you know, there's a lot of people like in the music industry in particular, you hear people who are like, there's like one camp that's like, everything is just who you know. It's not about talent at all. You might as well just give up because nobody makes it and it's all just a corporate machine, right? And then you have the other side that's like, you just got to hustle and like manifest your dreams and like, you know, if you want it hard enough, it'll come. And I'm kind of somewhere in the middle where I'm like, well, no, I mean, I think that it does require a lot of hard work. There's a lot of inequities in this industry. There's a lot of bullshit, right? But also there's a lot of really like amazing supportive communities, right? And like, you just got to like find those communities and like run towards those and try to like ignore the other stuff. And like, at the end of the day, I may not have control over a lot of things, right? Like I don't have control over whether or not I get 1 million streams on Spotify, but I have control over how good the song is. And I have control over the production and I have control over, you know, so it's like, I just try to focus on the things I do have control over. And I think the same thing about like coming through life, right? Like I didn't have control over my upbringing. I didn't have control over any of that stuff, but I'm trying to use it to like take care of other people, be better, be a force for good. And, you know, so like, I don't fall into the camp of like, everything's fucked or like, you just have to like be positive all the time. Right. It's like, no, things are fucked. But also there are good things out there and you can like, just like try to fill your life as much as possible with them and, you know, just get through the rest of it.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there is in either the music industry or in life, there's a lot of denial that's really easy to fall into. And even in like, you know, if you have trauma growing up, it's easy to just deny and say that didn't happen. Try and move on and just be treading water. But it is there and it's finding healthy ways to accept that and take it forward. That's the hard thing I've always found. And it's the same thing with like music and stuff where, it's who you know to a point, it's what you know, but again, like if you deny your optimistic side to be like, well, if there's a chance that I just work really hard and believe in what I'm doing, this might happen anyway. Because there's so many examples. Like I've just been reading Marissa Moss's book Hair Country, and it's following like women in country music, and it's a really interesting read following like Casey Musgraves and Maren Moss and stuff. And the industry is stacked against women and it is stacked against minorities and people of color, and it's finding then, fuck you guys, we're going to create our own community, we're going to create our own scene and go in the ways that aren't, you know, the gatekeeping established ways. And it's being realistic of the world around you, but being optimistic that things can be better if you open yourself up to those opportunities outside of that narrow frame.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, like one example that, you know, again, it comes back to that thing where, you know, it's like, I really have a hard time understanding the impulse when people do that thing where they're like, I suffered, so you should have to suffer too. Because I don't feel that way. I want the world to be a better place for the people coming up underneath of me, you know, like, and, you know, so there's all, you know, like, for example, there's a lot of people who would say like, you know, how can you have as much money as Jeff Bezos and like not like give it away, or like give your employees health insurance, right? And it's like, well, Jeff Bezos became Jeff Bezos by not caring about the experience his employees were having, right? Yeah. And so like I was listening to a TikTok and this woman was talking about like her dad was a business owner, and like, you know, it's not that you get to that level and then decide to be a dick. It's that those are small decisions that you make all the way up, right? And so she was like, my dad, like, you know, in his business, like chooses to give his employees health insurance and give them paid time off and parental leave and all these things that a lot of small businesses don't do, at least in America, right? Because he didn't want to have to go to work every day and look these people in the eye and know that he was screwing them over. And does that mean that he still has to go in every day? He can't just like sit at home and get free money? Yeah, but that's a decision that he made based on like, you know, so I think about the same thing as a musician. I'm very, you know, small, right? Like in terms of like, I'm nobody in the grand scheme of things, but it's really important to me to be making decisions like now and making decisions like consciously all the time about like, you know, like how I'm going to treat people, how I'm going to build community, how I'm going to offer people a hand, even when I don't feel like I have that much to give, right? I want to say like, hey, if you need any, you know, if you need a leg up, let me know, you know, because I don't want to just perpetuate the same world that I don't want to get ahead at the expense of other people, you know, who are just passionate about this like me, you know.
No, totally. And I think the system we're brought up in terms of like capitalist and stuff, it's in whatever industry you're in, if you're in music or whatever, it's always kind of the viewpoint, if you get it, someone else isn't getting it. But that's not the case, and that mentality needs to kind of be abolished, where if we succeed, someone else can still succeed. There's still gigs to go around, there's still, you know, different tours, different support slots, different listeners that everyone can go. People may go at different times, but it's still being able to rise together. You don't have to put anyone down to push yourself forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you know, you know, maybe again, you know, coming back to like, you know, some of the topics on the album, right? Like is, you know, I have this song on the album, it's called Adria, and it's about a woman that I met who was homeless, living out of her car, and she was in a car wreck and destroyed her car, literally was discharged from the hospital without clothes or shoes or like nothing, right? And she just was such a, not that you have to be, right, but she was such a like lovely, warm person who just really was very grateful for everything that, like, you know, we were able, like, I worked as a social worker at the time, and we were able to like connect her with some resources, but it just really made me stop and think about like, you know, what we're grateful for, right? And what we can offer each other, because in that moment, nothing, no feeling in the world compares to feeling like this person was in a really shitty situation and I made a difference in their life, you know, even just in a small way. Right. And so I really try to like apply, you know, I always say, like, when I play that song live, I always say, you know, the song is about building a longer table instead of a taller fence, you know, and it just, to me, I wrote it as like a reminder almost to myself that like, we tend to think about our interactions with other people in a very transactional way. Like I gave you this, what are you giving me? Right. But I think as humans, there's intrinsic value just in companionship and just in knowing that we're taking care of each other. Right. And so that's really important to me. And that's something that I would like, again, was a big theme on the album, was like, how can we grow? You know, how can I lift other people up at the same time that I'm lifting myself up? And how can I try to make other people who are maybe in similar situations as me, maybe they feel like I'm too old to start a music career, or like I don't even, I'm a woman, and like, it can be a really toxic place in the music industry for women, and like, how can I, write a song that kind of tells people like, like, fuck it, do what you want to do, like, do it now, and don't worry, like, just do it, because just sharing your experience with people can be really like affirming. And like, I just want, like, it's like all about visibility, right? Like, I want people to know, like, you don't have to be like a 20-year-old ingenue guitar virtuoso, right?
No.
To like write meaningful music, make meaningful art.
Yeah, no, totally. There's never a wrong time to do anything in life. If you want to do it, just grab it and go with it. But what I really enjoyed about like your songs is there is that like optimism to it, and it's in the face of you've like, from what I can get, because I listened to your first EP from 2015, and the confidence and like even like the power in your voice has changed so much in the 7 years. I really think like from those two EPs, it's like you really found who you are in this record. And I think having that optimism in the face of like knowing who you are is a really powerful thing to listen to. Even if, someone is going through it, they can listen to that, and it's like a rock for them to like cling onto, to be like, well, this is what I know for a fact, and they can gravitate towards those things.
Yeah. And I mean, I totally agree. Like, there's a reason that there was such a big amount of time. Like when I made that EP in 2015, like it was literally, I had 3 songs to my name, like at all. Right. And that was my first experience ever being in the studio. I didn't really know how to like communicate what I wanted. Right. Like it was very much just like a jam that we were recording. Right. But it was a good experience because it taught me a lot. And then I think part of the reason there was so much time in between there was because I did really feel like I was looking for like my authentic voice as an artist, and trying to figure out like, what do I sound like? What does my experience sound like? What does my perspective on the world sound like? Right? How can I write a song that's like not just, anybody could have written this,
No, totally. Carrying on with the album, one of the songs that really hit me and I thought was really interesting, I'd love to get into, was the Belvedere Hotel, which as a standard track, it's like 8 minutes long. And it's about an unsolved mystery of Ray Rivera. Was that a Netflix documentary? I think, did I watch a series about that?
It was an episode of Unsolved Mysteries.
And what was it that jumped out about that as a songwriting topic, or as something of interest?
So, I've always been like, I've always been like a really big, like, true crime fan. Like, to the point where when I was a little kid, I would like sneak down to our like basement where the TV was, like, and we had like it was like our rec room or whatever, but and I would like watch like all these true crime shows, First 48, whatever, all those about like, and then I, as like a 9-year-old kid, would like terrify myself and then not be able to sleep and drive my mom up a wall because she was like, stop watching the shows. But yeah, I've always just been really into that stuff. I don't know why I'm so fascinated by it, but like, so I was sitting at home I was sitting at home with my husband, and we were just like, smoking weed, watching TV, just enjoying our weekend. Right. And I don't know what it was about that particular story, but I just was like so interested in it. So like the story itself is kind of crazy, right? Like your typical unsolved mysteries stuff, like guy disappears, turns up dead, we don't know why, like, right. And I just was really interested in that whole aspect of it. And then what happened is I just like had to know more. And so I like listened to, there's a woman who lived in the apartment building. So the whole thing is the Belvedere Hotel is like a famous old hotel in Baltimore, right? And in Maryland. And And it was open in like the, early 1900s. And it was like the site, during Prohibition, debaucherous, chaotic parties, right? Like, I read somewhere that they had like bubble parties and like princes would come and like, it was a whole big thing. And then, of course, like throughout the decades, right, it went through periods of like kind of being more run down, and was sold a couple of times. And there was several mysterious deaths. There have been several mysterious deaths there. And then at one point, part of the hotel was converted into apartment buildings. And so this woman who lived in one of the apartments was a writer, and she lived there when this all was going down. And so she wrote a book about like trying to like investigate what was happening while she was living there. And so I just like was reading all the articles, became really interested in the history of this hotel. And, I feel like anything can be a song. So like, I just was like, oh, I'll just like sit down and write, I really love this like history in like country and roots music of like murder ballads, particularly like there's all these old folk songs that are about like people getting murdered, like, and then there, I don't know if you're familiar with, there used to be a history of, I think this started in England, where there would be gallows singers, where they would literally, like if somebody was getting hanged for a crime, there would be singers like, or songwriters who would go down there and who would like make up songs about that person's crimes, and then would like sell the sheet music, right? And this is when, and I like, so I've always been really fascinated with this, and I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a try. I'll write my own, murder ballad. Yeah. And we were in the middle of writing the album, and my producer came over, and I was like, bear with me, I'm going to show you this song, but you're probably going to think it's stupid. And he was like, not only do I like it, I think you need to tell like the whole fucking story, because at the time it was your standard verse, chorus, right? Like, and he was like, I want to know like the whole story. And there's like a Raconteurs song that like kind of inspired it a little bit. Like, I don't remember what the title is, but it's like, similarly, it's like 8 minutes long. It's like and so we were like, okay, like, what is this going to look like if I like just give like all of the details? And I will say, to this day, it's probably the longest it's taken me to like write a song, because figuring out how to write 8 verses that rhyme and tell a somewhat like cohesive story and are not boring is like pretty big challenge. But it was just it was fun. And it actually, when we recorded it, was the last song that we recorded. We had 3 days in the studio, so we like basically were living there, like we were live tracking everything. So I was in the vocal booth at the same time the band was tracking, because we just had to do that because we had really limited time. And also, I just like that technique for recording, because for me, I feel like a lot of the energy gets lost if I just have to like stand in a booth by myself and sing a song, I just lose, because so much, I'm like a very much a live performer, like I feel like I lose a lot of that energy in the recording studio. And so we saved it for last, because we were like, we knew we wanted to get kind of experimental with it. And so we just wanted to be like, we didn't want to be on a time crunch. We were like, we're going to get through all the other songs, then whatever time we have left, that's what we're going to. And we ended up actually getting through 9 songs, because there was one that didn't make the album, 9 songs in the first 2 days. And so we had like most of the third day to just like record this song. And my producer, like in the call sheet, told all of like our session musicians, like, bring every instrument that you have, like bring anything weird. We had like toy pianos. My bass player brought a theremin. I had a little melodica that our keyboard player ended up playing on. And I like it makes me like giddy every time I hear the little melodica notes in the song, because it just like, it was the funnest. It was like the most fun I've ever had in the studio. It was like, we're just being ridiculous. Like, my drummer is really excited because we recorded him using his vape pen. So now he has a vape pen credit on the album. And just ridiculous stuff. Like, they were at one point, they like recorded the chains, and there was at one point we like turned the cymbals on the drums upside down and like loosened everything, and just were like getting as much noise as we could.
That's so cool.
And yeah, so it's like it's probably my favorite song on the album, just because like we really like I had full permission to just like we just got as weird with it as we wanted to get,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What I really like about this song was the fact that it's kind of like it's in 3 acts. So it is like you do have that time to kind of digest things. It's not, like, because I think like sometimes like Woody Guthrie songs and Bob Dylan songs can be guilty of like, here's 50 verses, not much is going to change, and you just have to deal with like a 12-minute song. Well, what I really liked about this was it is that journey of the thing, and it is, what was your initial in with this? Because what I enjoyed was, the setup of the hotel was the hotel as a character, it's like you address it as she. Was that the first in you had for the Air song, was the hotel as the character itself?
Yeah, and that for sure, that is kind of how I wanted to convey that, because that's how it felt to me when I was like, because when I first heard about this story, it was like, okay, on its own, this is an interesting mystery, right? But then I just I love this idea that like places have memories.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I don't know how much, I wasn't raised religious or anything. I don't like, so I think I just like think of all that, like anything spiritual as just like it's interesting to me, because, like, I think it's like, it's all just like an interesting theory, and so like, I love this idea of like places having memories and like kind of being embedded with like the things that have happened there. And so, definitely when I was doing background, basically when my producer said, I want to know the whole thing, I was like reading all these books and listening to podcasts and like watching documentaries about, the hotel and all of this stuff. And so like, to me, it did become a character. Like the hotel is a character in the song, because it's kind of about, it's about Ray Rivera and what happened to him, but it's also kind of about, it's like almost from the perspective of this like hotel that's seen all of these things,
Yeah, it's just the last in a long line of like tragedies and weird things.
Exactly.
Happen. Yeah. But no, I enjoyed that because like I'm a like true crime and murder mystery fan myself, and my wife's obsessed with it and things. I think we watched the Unsolved Mystery of that, and it reminded me of like the Cecil Hotel one and all those things. But it's hard, I think, with those things, because I remember watching the Cecil Hotel one, and I thought it was quite like kitschy and cheap how they did it. It was very like TMZ. And I think you can kind of run the risk of sound like you're just cashing in, but this was so well done. I have a song called Mothman. It's about the Mothman down in West Virginia. But the second verse is talking about the bridge collapse, and I was like worrying when I was writing it, because you don't want to cheapen a tragedy that was a real thing, and it is like a really delicate line to cross. And I think you fucking nailed it on this song. It's such a like great 8-minute epic of a like folk song that like has like a rock edge to it. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that definitely was like a conscious thought that I had, right? Because like his wife, his widow,
these people exist
alive. Like, and he his family out there, right? And so it's like, you don't want to like cheapen it, or like, I mean, obviously it's a dramatization, because that's what art is, but that is, I think, another part of the reason that I wanted to focus on like the hotel, like as the observer of these events, right? Because I didn't want it to just be like a sensationalized, like, account of what happened to this guy, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it's like, it's a line you have to walk, because it's like, I don't want to sensationalize, and I don't want to be like gross about it. Like this person's like real, like a real person that lived and died, and but also there's a certain amount of like artistic license that you take when you're writing about a thing that happened, right? Especially in a song, because it's not a biography. It's a piece of art, and so like it also has to flow and rhyme and kind of bring people along in the story. It has to ebb and flow, and it has to have peaks and valleys, right? So that like for sure was a consideration that I had. Fortunately, I'm a small enough artist that I don't think that his wife is probably ever gonna, like, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not like I'm, Bob Dylan, like, writing a song and then everybody's going to hear it, right? Like that's kind of the luxury of being an independent artist.
Yeah, but I also think, if you're at that level, this is done in a respectful, interesting way. It's not, glamorizing or doing anything that would make it seem untoward. Because I know going through, like, especially like the YouTube ones that aren't necessarily like screened by Netflix or have a high production budget or someone checking it is like, what the fuck? Like, you need to dial it down on what you're saying about this. And it's, when it turns into like the glam, like especially the serial killer ones, when it starts glamorizing like how intelligent and amazing they are. And you're like, what the fuck are you guys saying? Like, it's one of those things that's a really tight line to walk. Have you thought, not that you want to get into a stereotypical genre, but has there been any others that have jumped to mind in terms of like unsolved mysteries that you've thought would make a cool song?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, so it's funny because I think I don't know if you've experienced this, I don't think that this is a unique experience on my behalf, but like, I find that I go through like, phases as a songwriter where like, during the record, I was writing a lot about like, from my perspective and people that I knew. And like Belvedere, almost was, it was like, it's interesting because it was kind of part of the shift that I was doing where I was like, okay, I've covered this ground a lot now, so I'm starting to look outside of me and outside of my personal experiences. And I'm starting to think about like other people's experiences and telling other people's stories. Right. And so, actually I have like, I think more now since we finished writing the record, a lot of the material that I've been writing since then certainly has focused a lot more on like it, like I just a story that I heard or like a folk legend or something, where it's not something that I'm personally connected to. And actually, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast Dolly Parton's America.
No, I've just been recommended that. It's something I need to.
It's so good. It's so good. So good. And like, I was already a fan of Dolly because like, who isn't? But it literally like they're interviewing her, like talking her through her career. Right. Like, and the first episode is called Sad Ass Songs. And she's talking about how like, growing up, like, she had a lot of these like folk songs, that you would just learn, right? Because you like play them at jams or whatever with your friends and your family members on your porch. And so that was her foundation for how she wrote songs. And so she wrote a lot of like really sad songs. And so like, I don't remember the name of the song, but it's like, there's, she had a song like a boy, the boy named Andy, and like, and he's like homeless and he has like his little doll. And like, she was like, that was kind of what I was writing a lot of at that time. And like, my producer was like, hey, can you stop writing all these sad ass songs? But it just really inspired me to think about like, that's so interesting, right? Because I think a lot of us as songwriters do go through those phases, right? And so I've been inspired by that. And I really have tried to think about like, let's take this story that has nothing to do with me, like, and tell a story that people can relate to, right? Like, even if like they haven't specifically been through it. And and that was like, she had said in this interview, like, basically, I just really like putting myself in other people's shoes and sharing their experiences, because I think when we put ourselves in other people's shoes, like it makes us more empathetic, and we can, like if I tell the story of a woman, who, got knocked up by her boyfriend who then abandoned her, and then she throws herself off a bridge, right? Which is like one of the saddest Dolly Parton songs of all time. Like that does kind of force you, even if you've never been anywhere near that situation, it forces you to think about that perspective and to think about that person's life and they're going through, right? And so I loved that, because I think I've always kind of felt like, oh, this had to be something that I like experienced or something that I know about personally, and I've definitely had like a shift towards like just wanting to tell people's stories, right? I've told my story and I probably will keep telling my story, but I also just really want to like get into other people's heads and like think about what their life experience is like and maybe like, you know, share that.
Yeah. No, totally. I think that's a great thing. And that's like what Dolly's done well with her stuff. And folks like you see like Jason Isbell does it and John Prine, where you have those story songs that they're adopting characters. Because I remember I saw ages ago, someone was just like, it's lazy to assume every song someone sings is about them. But that's kind of the mentality we're brought up. And that's the main thing, is if you are singing this song, you have experienced that in some way. And it's like, well, no, it can be characters of things, it can be, you know, other people's stories, and it does, like, it's like Angel from Montgomery is a prime example. Like the opening line is "I am an old woman," and it's, you know, a young John Prine singing it, and it's like I remember being younger and like not understanding that you could do that in a song and being like, oh, you can not lie, but you can just create a whole new world for this song to exist in. And it's a really like freeing creative possibility that once you realize and accept, it opens up so many doors.
It does. And you know, I think I think in some ways, by like putting ourselves in the shoes of people, like other people, right, that may not have been your experience, but you are imagining at that point how you would respond to that experience, right? And so I think what it does when you do that is it really makes you find kind of the like a little bit of the universal truth, right? Because it's like, you know, I don't know what it's like to be in that situation, but here's how I imagine I would handle this, or like, here's what I can imagine people would be feeling in that situation. And so to do that, you have to take yourself out of your own lived experience and background, and you have to think about, what would I do if I was this person, right? And so when you do that, like, I think it really, like, the listener ends up putting themselves in that, like, they can see themselves in this situation because you've created a world in which we are all collectively imagining how we would respond, right? And yeah, it is very freeing. It just allows you to kind of think about like the like the nuance of the human experience, right? Like, it's not black and white. And particularly, you know, we love to write about characters that are flawed, and characters that have redemption arcs, you know, and you know, sometimes that's us and sometimes it's other people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And with like this album, the EP you brought out a few years ago, the Rough Sides one, the tracks on that are on this. Were they the kind of like oldest songs you'd been sat with for this record, or how old is like this oldest song you have on this record?
So actually the EP came out of we were that was all scratch tracks from the album. So when we first started planning the album, right, the first thing that we did is we would go through batches of songs, and then we would kind of, myself and my producer Dylan Welsh, we would sit down and talk about, like, in each session we'd talk about like 3 songs, right? And I would like show him, first I'd play it for him, and then I would like show him some songs that like I was kind of inspired by, or like that had a vibe I was trying to pull from, or even sometimes I literally was just showing him like a tiny clip of a song where I'm like, I like this one thing, you know, and then he would show me stuff, and then we would kind of do that back and forth until we knew that we were both on the same page with like the vibe we were trying to create. And then do any like rewrites that needed to happen. You know, usually he didn't really do any writing on the album, but he would say, I think that this needs to be reworked. I think you need to be more like concise with your language here, or like, you know, whatever. And that actually worked really well. And then so once we'd done that, we went and we did the scratch tracks, so that the band would have something to prepare them, but also to listen to while they were like, because we were going to be playing everything live. And so that was just me, and my guitar, and,
awesome,
you know, and a mic in a room, right? Like literally in his house. And we just recorded them for utility, but then, after we'd finished the album, and you know how things are with the album cycles, it's like, it takes, you know, once you've recorded the album, you're like, okay, now the real work starts. You know, I have to get all the logistics organized. and I knew that was going to take a while. And I was like, man, I really want to like release something, I'm so excited about these songs. And so, he was like, well, why don't we just do a little bit of treatment on the scratch tracks and we could like release those, like, and I thought that was really a cool idea because I liked the idea of it being like just really raw and the most stripped down version of the songs, and so we chose, the 3 songs for the EP, and released those as rough sides. And, I thought it was really cool, like, just because it helps get you out of your head a little bit of like everything, I think we live in an age where we think like we're just so used to hearing the final product that we like think everything has to come out perfect. And so it was fun to kind of have that experience of being like, I'm just going to release these like rough acoustic tracks like that were recorded in my producer's house, because I think it was a fun way to get to like share the kind of beginning of the journey towards the album.
Awesome. And with working with Dylan as a producer, was the thought process you needed a producer and you wanted to like look around, or did you know Dylan first and then make it into a collaboration for this record?
Yeah, so he's actually an old friend. Like he's played with me a couple times as a lead guitar player, and his primary like 90% of his day is taken up by he's a touring musician. He tours with different bands, like he gets hired to go out on the road, he does session work, so he is a professional lead guitar player, right? Like that's like what he does. But obviously during the pandemic everything was shut down, and for the first time in literally years we were both in the same place at the same time, and like so I just like dropped by his house and I was like, to hang out, and we were just shooting the shit. And, he was kind of talking about how like work had really dried up, and, and he was trying to focus more on some like creative projects that he had been putting on the back burner. And he mentioned that he had really started in some of the session work that he had been doing. He had started getting, started kind of assisting, doing some of the like engineering stuff in
awesome.
the studio. And he was getting really into producing and was really excited about this. And so I was like, well, I've been writing like crazy. Like I have like half an album ready to go. Like, let's talk, And so, I actually he was like, well, yeah, just send me some stuff, and then I did send him like, again, just like phone recordings of some songs that I had been writing, kind of expecting that he would be like, oh yeah, cool, like, and then, wouldn't go anywhere. But he was like, I'm really excited about this. Like, I really think that like, I would have a lot to contribute on this like project. Like, let's just do one pre-production session and just like see how it goes. And then like, we can go from there. And the first time we met up, again, just like went over 3 songs, and like instantly I felt like we were speaking the same language. And I was like, he gets what I'm trying to go for. Like he understood the vibe. And whenever he was contributing, it was always based on like my vision for the song. Right. And then it was like, his style of collaboration is very additive rather than like, he's usually adding things rather than taking them away. And so I really felt like that served, it was like, it ended up being layers of both of us on, the final product really was a collaboration of like how we wanted these songs to be arranged, the vibe we wanted to give off, the little instrumentations that we wanted to add in, right? All of that was so like highly collaborative. And so I wasn't necessarily looking for like a producer, but it just was like a right place, right time kind of thing. And just ended up being like very, we both were just really, it just is one of those things. Like, I don't know if you as an artist, like sometimes it's hard to describe what made that particular situation in that particular time. And that like everything just lined up. It just felt like everything was lining up. Even when we booked our studio time, 3 days in the studio to record 10 songs originally. Nuts. That is, we literally, and we didn't think we were just like, this is just gonna be a foundation. We're just gonna like see what we can get done. You know, and we ended up getting like 85% of the record record. We had some stuff like flown in and, you know, added in post, but like most of what you hear on the record was all recorded live. And I think it really, for me, it really retains a lot of its like that energy that was in the room that was so important to me.
No, totally. That's what I get from that record is it is like, it's got that edge and vibe to it of it being urgent, and it is a really present record. And that's what I really enjoy. But with it comes out September 2nd, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
This podcast will come out at the end of August, so I think I'll try and time it so it's the week of. But what are kind of your plans around the album? Have you got any tours booked, or you've got like obviously you've got a show like a album launch show in August? What's the
So,
like schedule or plan for playing it live?
Yeah, so we're doing a big hometown show on August 12th. Just because I like my community around here has always been so supportive of my music, and I really wanted them to have like the first crack at the album, you know. So this is really going to be like a preview / just like a big party. You know, so that we can like really showcase the album. My producer's flying in, like he's gonna play with us. Like we have a bunch of the original players. My drummer on the album actually is my like full-time drummer now. But you know, a bunch of the other players on the album are going to come in for the album release, and it's just going to be a big party. We're going to have a lot of fun. Basically my entire August is like nuts. I mean, I don't know how things are in the UK, but like summer in Washington is like, it's the only time we get to like be outside. So it's just like people, you know, want to do all of the things. So it's like everything happens within these like 2 months, you know, from like kind of mid-July to like September, where it's like everything is happening. So we're pretty much booked solid. You know, we've got a ton of really fun shows regionally in the Pacific Northwest in August. And then in September, I'm going to be in Nashville for the Americana Music Association. Awards and everything, and just checking out some, you know, I'm gonna, you know, just get to like hang out with friends that I haven't seen since the world shut down, and catch a bunch of, I have some friends that are showcasing. I'm working on some like unofficial stuff, and then I'm hoping to kind of make that into like a little mini run down to, I was gonna do like Memphis and then New Orleans in September, and then fly home. So just a little mini thing, you know, but touring's not as economical as it used to be. So, you know, but yeah, definitely just planning on like really enjoying the, you know, the album finally being out and like, available to the masses, and playing, you know, getting it in front of as many people as I can, just playing a bunch of shows.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, I think that sounds like the best place to leave it, because I really can't wait for more people to listen to this. It has been, because I've only had the SoundCloud link, and it's been really fun to just enjoy and sit down and listen to, and I can't wait until it's out in the world for more people to enjoy.
Well, thank you so much. Me neither. I'm really excited. You know, and it's so fun to get to like share it with people. You know, like I gotta like, you know, my publicist has to like get me under control, because I just want to like give it to everybody. Like that defeats the purpose of having an album to sell. But you know, I'm just really excited for everybody to hear it. It's just something that I like am so passionate about. Like I genuinely, like, this was not a record like we're just like, oh, we're here in our album release cycle, we need to do an album, we haven't done enough. It really was just like, it was a record that was made just because we felt like everything, the stars were aligning.
It was a record that needed to happen, not one that
exactly.
But
I appreciate your, you know, your kind words and taking the time for me today, and I just can't wait to share it with everybody.
Thank you so much. And there you have it, you rogues, rapscallions, rascals, and rebels. I hope you enjoyed episode 51 of the Rogue Country podcast. No longer into the van, we've moved forward. And go check out Brittany Collins' her new album, Things I Tell My Therapist, is out everywhere from Friday the 2nd of September. And it is a doozy. I highly recommend it. Until next time, folks, keep supporting the things you love. Keep doing the things you love. And peace.